Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jake, the Scary Story Guy, and today we're talking about a very interesting horror novel by Paul Tremblay called A Head Full of Ghosts. Now, this is the first I've read of Tremblay, although I'm aware he authored a book called The Cabin at the End of the World, which was adapted last year by M. Night Shyamalan into the film Knock at the Cabin, which I reviewed on this channel. Now, I didn't read that novel, but having watched the film, I felt like it didn't really stick the landing, and so I mentioned this in my review of the film, but I looked up the ending to the book on Wikipedia, and it was way different than the movie, and to be honest, it was a lot better. And I actually picked up A Head Full of Ghosts at a thrift store a couple of years ago, but it just sat on my shelves collecting dust. It was always something I wanted to read more. But once I made the connection, like, oh, this is the Knock at the Cabin guy, I was like, all right, let's knock this bad boy out. And guys, I gotta say, I'm glad I did. I wish I'd read it sooner, in fact, because A Head Full of Ghosts is one of the most interesting horror novels I've read in a really long time. It takes a ton of home run swings, and not all of them make solid contact, but the ones that do, it's just bam! Like, there's some stuff in this book I'm gonna be thinking about for a while. It's ambitious, it's unsettling as hell, and it has the distinction of being one of the few unapologetically postmodern novels that I actually like. So if you find this review helpful in deciding whether or not you want to read the book, please like this video, it helps a ton, and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more horror movie and book reviews just like this. But before I get too ahead of myself, let me tell you what this book's about. So we start off with a girl named Mary. She's in her 20s, and she's being interviewed by a reporter about a reality TV show her family was in when she was a little girl. The reality show was called The Possession, and the family agreed to film it to help with medical bills they incurred when Marjorie, the eldest daughter, Mary's older sister, started to behave very strangely. Was Marjorie actually possessed by demons? Was she simply an early onset schizophrenic? What's going on here? Those are the questions the people who watched this documentary had to grapple with, and those are the questions we as the readers have to grapple with as Mary flashes back through her memories of that time. And one other thing to mention, throughout the novel we are treated to interludes, I say treated to loosely, written by a horror blog poster who is going back over the documentary and you know, rehashing the scenes, comparing it to various pieces of horror media, that sort of thing. And if you're well versed in horror fiction, or if you've seen some of my other reviews on here, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a second, that sounds a bit like House of Leaves. Because you've got a story, you've got commentary on the story, and then you've got commentary on the commentary. And Tremblay knows this. There's an explicit reference to House of Leaves in this book, as well as a few implicit references. There's a character named Navidson, for one. And anyone who's ever heard me talk about House of Leaves for 5 seconds knows how much I fucking hate that book. So you'd think we're not off to a great start here. But while House of Leaves was pretentious and overly complex and inaccessible on purpose, I stand by that. The book is just actively trying to piss off its readers. A Head Full of Ghosts is like the populist version of that. It's still very postmodern. It can't really bring itself to tell a story just in a straightforward narrative way. Tremblay is also well aware that his story rips quite liberally from other pieces of horror media, possession media, most notably The Exorcist, which this book bears a striking resemblance to in many different parts. And this is probably my main complaint with this book. Not that, you know, a lot of what happens to this family is probably kind of familiar if you know your horror movies, but that Tremblay is obviously pretty self-conscious about that. So he inserts these fake blog posts about the documentary. There's kind of a lot of them, and they're all just like, and this scene calls to mind a similar scene from The Exorcist. And it's like, we don't need that. That doesn't add anything. Because if you've seen The Exorcist, then you don't need to have that connection made for you. You've already made it. It's patronizing. But if you haven't seen The Exorcist, then the connection is going to be lost on you, and nothing is gained by having the author spell it out for you. It doesn't improve the reading experience, and it might even cheapen it, at least to my eye, to know that a lot of the plot is sort of lifted from other texts. Far better, I think, would be to just write a solid possession story, which Tremblay has obviously done here, but in the parts where it maybe feels a little familiar to other more established possession stories, just roll with it. Let other people say it in reviews outside the book. You don't need to say it, right? It's not as if you're the first author to ever take inspiration from other stuff. But that really is my only major complaint, because the blog post pages excluded, this book kicks ass. To overuse the cliche, see, I'm pointing out that I'm using a cliche here because I'm self-conscious about it, but there were so many scenes in this book where I just couldn't put it down. I'm very protective about my sleep, so when it's time for bed and I've got to put the book down and stop reading, I usually just make the choice to do that, put down the book and stop reading. But this book got me more than a few times. The development of Marjorie's illness, possession, whatever this is so well fleshed out, and it's just so creepy. And Tremblay manages this while also managing to keep things ambiguous, because there's so many creepy things that she could be doing that would just give the game away. Oh, she's definitely possessed. To use The Exorcist as an example, nobody's head is turning around 360 degrees without some kind of supernatural aid there. But Tremblay keeps the unsettling horror of The Exorcist while also still having you as the reader just consistently ask yourself what's actually going on here. And almost as disturbing as the evolution of Marjorie throughout the book is the evolution of these girls' parents. Severe Hardship, I think, has a way of showing who a person really is, and watching the true colors of these parents kind of increasingly shine through as things get worse and worse is incredibly unsettling, because it makes you ask, like, oh, what would this situation turn me into? Stephen King did the blurb on the front of this book. He wrote, "A head full of ghosts scared the living hell out of me, and I'm pretty hard to scare." Now that's a blurb for your horror book, all right? The second Stephen King says that, publishers instantly just like, yep, that's going on the cover. And I'm not going to talk about the ending to this book. I don't want to spoil anything, but suffice it to say, it does not disappoint. It comes out of nowhere too, because you think the story is like just kind of wrapping up, just putting the finishing, touches on it, and then just massive gut punch. That's as far as I'll go, but this is a really well-crafted ending. The final 10 pages of the book really elevated it for me. I was gonna give this 3.5 stars initially, but I actually finished it a couple of months ago, and you know how time sometimes changes your opinion of a thing. Sometimes it takes something you loved in the moment and sort of cools you on it. Other times it takes something you have mixed feelings about and it turns you into a big fan. That second option was my experience with this. The blog posts are really annoying. The postmodern structure does get a little bit grating. These issues show up a lot in the book, and so I finished it and I was like, yeah, that was good. Did I like that? I don't know. That being said, the bulk of this book, the actual meat of the story, has really wormed its way into my brain to an impressive degree. I've been very surprised how often and how fondly I've thought about it since finishing. So guys, I've got to say that A Head Full of Ghosts is one of the better horror novels I've read in a while. It's mentally sticky, it's got characters that are easy to empathize with, it's genuinely creepy, and all of these strengths really serve to make the flaws of this book, which are apparent, not feel as consequential. So I am going to give A Head Full of Ghosts 4 stars out of 5. Alright guys, that about does it for today. Stay tuned for more spooky content coming soon, but in the meantime, thank you for watching this video, and here's hoping you survive to see the next one.